do is make a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
So moved.
Second. We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Also aye. Is this, Mr. Revels, turn it over to you at this point, the discussion about the U.S. Cellular Grayson County Comprehensive Agreement.
That was your mic.
I'll give a little background, and then if there are technical questions, I think the real experts there. Let me give some background to how this agreement and the proposed partnership came together. We received an unsolicited proposal from U.S. Cellular to help us develop cellular and wireless 5G services in the western end of the county. When they called, they said the reason they were reaching out to us is they had done a similar thing with a county in Missouri that had never had cell service. Population is like 11,000 people for the entire county. And they had worked on a model where the county put money into it to help make the business model work. So we received that proposal, and as part of the Wireless Authority, we brought it for the very first meeting. And then we did what is required by the state. We advertised it. Stephen got on the phone with T-Mobile and Verizon. I got on the phone with two other providers. Nobody else had an interest in even considering working with us. And so we started looking at the agreement, the structure of the agreement. And I break that thing into three parts. One is land acquisition and construction, equipment, and refreshing and maintaining equipment over time, and frankly, ongoing tower maintenance and insurance and leases. And I did this because as they kept coming back with information, for example, land acquisition and tower construction, I reached out to two companies that build towers and either build them for a company who operates them, or they can build and operate them for any entity that wants them. Because I wanted to compare the cost of the different components to what U.S. Cellular was putting on the table. And what I found there was U.S. Cellular, as you see in the agreement, negotiated a $1.2 million guaranteed max. And we have control over paying for legitimate expenses on a reimbursement basis. So we're not giving them a bunch of money up front. And if the cost comes in under 1.2, that money stays with us. The other two companies where I said, what if we wanted to build them and contracted with you? They would not give us guaranteed maximums in the mountains. They said it's going to be somewhere around $400,000 or $500,000, but we'd have to have a change order provision based on the mountain conditions to ensure that we didn't underestimate the cost. Now, when it came to equipment, and you know we were talking about giving them a grant for $1.2 million, the equipment that goes up, the 5G equipment, has a life expectancy of 7 to 10 years. I suspect in our case it'll be closer to 7 because wind, ice, and really cold weather has a tendency to cause problems with the equipment over time. So we're giving them a grant for the first $1.2 million. They'll put that equipment up and in place. They will have to eat everything else, any repairs, any cost of refreshment. So again, when I looked at what they were proposing, honestly, it didn't seem to be out of line. The thing that surprised me was the ongoing tower maintenance. So these towers are going to be about 200 feet tall. And so I, again, called three companies that do nothing but contract tower maintenance. And in this case, U.S. Cellular will do it with their own teams. But this is what I learned. The cost per tower estimated will be about $35,000 a year. And that's to keep the tower in condition to meet federal regulations. For example, if there's any peeling of paint, if there's paint or any kind of coating, which all towers have some level of coating, they have to take it off. They have to sandblast it and redo it because the federal regulations say that's an environmental hazard. So it's estimated to be about 33 to 34,000. Lease payments, they will cover all the lease payments for the life of the towers, and in our community, that's estimated to be about $3,500 to $4,000 per month. The thing that I thought was interesting was insurance, because once again, the first agent said probably about $4,000. But when he did his environmental look at us and where these towers are going, he said probably closer to $7,000 or $8,000. Again, wind, ice, etc. So to me, as I look at this deal, I can understand that somebody might question, why is the county putting money into a project with a partner that's for profit? And the answer is, it's an investment in not only life safety, but in quality of life aspects for the people that live in the western half of this county. And granted, it's an investment. We're putting money into it. But one of the things that I guess, Steve, would be fair to say that you challenged me on is, how do we limit the uncertainty of financial risk going forward? Because these towers have a 99-year life expectancy. But we also know that if you're holding the lease, you're paying those payments every month. And if we're doing maintenance, we have to repair them, whether they're damaged or whether it's just normal wear and tear. So to me, we are investing up front and totally eliminating our risk on the backside. We have no financial risk except for the 911 equipment that we put up there. None. They will repair roads, power supplies, grounds, buildings that are on the ground to support the towers, any tower requirement. The only thing they don't repair is our equipment. And we have the right to have our equipment on those towers as long as the tower stands, and it'll cost us $100 a year. So that's the go-forward cost for us to accomplish something that, frankly, if we leave it up to the for-profit sector, probably won't happen. Because there's not an interest in having a business model that fails. And so this agreement really attempts to balance public good, reality of the for-profit sector, and I think, as Paul would indicate, help us address more effectively a critical life safety issue, which is law enforcement that can't talk to each other, EMS people that can't call for backup, and the part we often fail to remember is, when my phone line is down, I'd love to have the option of having a cell phone if my house is on fire or my wife is hurt. And right now, the chances of that happening in White Top and in the Western End, it's a crapshoot, if you will, because it doesn't work. It works less than it does work. So that's the structure and the background on this document. And believe me, we've been through the document and I tried to cover our bases effectively, but I will answer with Steve's help any questions y'all have about that document.
Mike, you have anything to add before we take any questions?
No, sir. I think that Tom covered it all. I'm more than happy to answer any questions from the legal perspective or about how this is structured. But I think Tom covered the substance of it.
Yeah. From a legal perspective, any concerns that you identified or any risk that we need to think through?
There's always risk in anything. However, in a situation like this, I think we've negotiated a contract in which we have minimized our risk, in which we have given ourselves the tools to make sure that we have the ability to enforce getting what it is that we believe we bargained for. The question is always going to come down to, are you willing to go to bat and use the leverage that you have in order to enforce that? course. You always need to understand what it is that you have that you can use. But within the confines of this contract, you can say with a reasonable degree of confidence that you are going to get 3 towers that you can put your public safety radio on that are going to be sending and receiving cellular and wireless broadband signals. Probably sometime in 2025 at the very latest in Q1 or Q2 of 2026. And if you don't, then you're not going to be out the money that you have agreed to, or if you are out the money, you'll be able to get it back out of the company that's a major publicly traded corporation and is likely to actually happen. So you've mitigated a lot of your risk. Nobody knows the future, but
Sure.
I think we've done a pretty good job of making sure that the risk is as minimal as it can be.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
See, Mike mentioned one thing I'd say, because I think US Cellular has put their best foot forward in trying to accommodate and work with us. For example, their engineers are meeting Shane to discuss design of the towers, to ensure that our requirements for 911 take precedent over the cell equipment. And by that, I mean, there's a certain level of separation that has to occur between certain antennas and devices for a 911 system with microwave. Not necessarily the common tower would be designed as a cell tower for that. US Cellular has agreed that Shane has final approval on placement of the platforms for mounting equipment. And that's just one thing. But again, the fact that it's so important for 911, that's imperative. Because if they just put any old tower up, it might preclude us from having the flexibility we need with 911.
Question?
Mr. Chair, I just had a question. So the maintenance, just walk me through that again. Is that included in what US Cellular is gonna, the roughly 30,000 a year? It's 90 for 3. I guess my thing is I didn't want it to come back, and that's something we gotta figure out how to budget for in a couple of years or whatnot.
Yes. The simple answer, yes. They're assuming all responsibility. Now, we will own the tower for 20 years, but they're responsible for maintaining it and all the equipment associated with it, all the grounds, all the road access, all the follow-up permitting. For us financially, the only financial obligation the contract spells out is $100 a year per tower
After the construction.
after the construction.
Can we walk through the board just next steps if they decide to move forward on a resolution? Let's talk about next steps with this.
Yes, if you approve this, then, and Mike, I'll ask you to walk through the financing steps that would occur. Operationally, if you act on the resolution positively tonight, then we have 2 meetings set up with US Cellular next week. One, I will be meeting with their team lead for ground lease acquisition, because they've agreed that I get first shot at talking to any and all citizens, and that their teams won't come in unless I'm a part of the team to try to take Chicago language and convert it to Grayson County, which frankly, I think will make it move faster than they anticipate. The second meeting next week is actually more of a technical meeting, which Shane will lead, which is the first sit down to talk about tower design. And my expectation would be that shortly after next week, we would start contacting residents who have the property that are the preferred locations. We know who they are. And start working on the ground leases, because for them, a ground lease has a tendency to be the longest part of their process. They say you need to budget 6 to 9 months. And I just can't imagine that we'll run into that here. I mean, I already know one of the landowners, and I'll be totally surprised if he doesn't agree that if it's county wanting to do something, he'll work with us. But operationally, that would be the first step. We'd go into design with them. They'll have their construction and development crews ready with a 30-day notice once we get the ground lease. And we're off and running. And like Mike said, 30 months for completion of the project. And if they don't, then we get our money back. So they've committed to, unlike projects of the past, we're dealing with a company that has the horsepower to do what we're trying to do. And that's gonna make a huge difference in the resources they can bring to the table.
So the next step for us is we have to approve a resolution,
Correct.
and then we need to adopt the agreement? Or
Mike,
if the resolution, if we adopt the resolution, does that push it forward with the comprehensive agreement?
Yes, the resolution approves the comprehensive agreement and authorizes the chairman to execute and deliver it. There is a condition before he does that, though, which is we need to make sure that the VRA bond, basically the VRA is able to successfully sell its bonds, which are secured by our lease, for a price that's acceptable to us as far as the interest rate goes. So there's kind of an if there, but basically, I say basically, would anticipate that probably this agreement would be signed, but we would just hold the final exchange of signatures for effectiveness until May 1 or the week after May 1, at which point this would all become actually effective. So we're just putting all the pieces in place so that once the bond sells, again, assuming we get the interest rate, and right now it looks mid to high threes is where the interest rate will come. That it will all come off, and Tom and the US Cellular team will be able to go out there and start negotiating.
So I have a question. We talked about, I think, an 8-year term at one point, which was 1 cent of the levy. And then if, I can't remember the numbers, but if we increase that a little bit, we could do it sooner. Can you walk me back through that?
Yeah.
I'll have to go back. You have it, right?
I don't have that document with me.
Well, let's just summarize it.
It was,
Okay. It was,
it was started at 10. I
Yeah,
believe.
8 years was the
We walked
most.
back to it, it started, 1 cent was 10, sorry,
see,
There we
it
go.
was 11,
11, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
1 cent was 11.
11 years.
And to walk it back to 8.5 was about 2.15 or 2.20, so a little bit over 1 cent of the levy.
And did we have consensus to go with that?
Those are just our three options. As I understand it, we're waiting to see what the final
Okay.
interest rate's gonna be and what the final document looks like. And if I'm understanding, I'm sorry.
No. The interest rate that they used to build those charts, though, was greater than 3.5%.
Yeah, it was closer to 4.
It was closer to 4.5%. So right now, if it holds until May 1st, we'd be even better off.
Yeah.
And so we'd be looking at that and coming back and could say, do you want to put the 20 grand in, pay it off 4 years earlier or 5 years earlier, depending on what the numbers show.
Question I have is, you and US Sailor are going to be doing the lease negotiation with landowners. US Sailor is going to be responsible for the lease
Correct.
of the land,
Correct.
but the county will own the towers
Correct.
for 20 years.
Correct.
And then at the end of that 20-year term, we hand them over to US Sailor.
Correct. And that's what we pay $100 a year for.
In line of that, at the end of 20 years, we turn them over. If the technologies change, which it will, and those towers are obsolete, if they are, would they then be responsible for the removal and disposal of those? Because that would be a big deal.
If, even when we own the tower, let's say that a 90-mile-an-hour wind hits and something freaky happens and a tower falls. US Cellular is responsible for doing an emergency tower stand to get it back in operation on their dime. We then file the insurance and pay them whatever the insurance would pay for the recovery of the tower. But they're responsible for all of it from day one, even though we own the towers for 15 years, 20 years. And part of that was because of the financing and being able to hold on that and show county ownership to help with the bond issue.
I mean, I know hopefully there's folks watching this, the citizens, fit this bill. But it sounds like we've done everything possible to minimize the risk and solve one of our biggest problems that we've been facing for quite some time. It's pretty impressive.
Potentially 3 problems.
Right, yeah.
911 cell phone, and they're putting the 5G technology for wireless on the
Which
top.
is amazing.
Without a tax increase.
But yeah, I'm glad you pointed that, yeah, without the tax increase. And hopefully the terms of this loan will be 10 years or less.
We definitely will.
Yeah.
Well, we could go with the 11 on a worst case scenario.
Right.
But it's in the county's best
Interest.
interest to get this thing paid off as quick as we can.
Yes.
Remember, we still have a really low debt ratio right now, which I'm not encouraging us taking out debt for things that are not necessary. We're taking about a must-have that will change how West Marion County can focus from a EMS, law enforcement, cellular piece. It's a big project.
Steve, if you remember, the chart that Sarah Fry showed us in 3 years, even with this debt service, as the school debt service falls, our debt service becomes like a fourth of what it is today in total. So we're really looking at the next 3 to 3.5 years, I think it is, where we're going to be rocking right along there, a little increase in debt service, but not a lot. And then all of a sudden, bam, it falls and 3/4 of it goes away. So we're not locked in with the current debt service levels that we have for 15 years or for long term. But you're right, Randy, it pays to pay it off and get out from under it.
One more thing, I know we're talking about the western end completely, but this project does affect the countywide radio system that should, because that's the main problem in the western end. There are problems with the radio system other places. So this will be a brand new radio system countywide. Is that correct?
Mitchell, I'm glad you brought that up because we have a tendency to overlook that. The 911 system will put new equipment on every existing tower in the county. And we are adding a tower on Pond Mountain to replace the one on White Top because Park Service won't let us repair it. And there's a possibility that we're looking at that there might be another tower north of Summerfield that could be constructed that would help us expand towards Freeze and back into Elk Creek with behind Point Lookout. So yes, total brand new. And the thing that a major advancement in the current design that Shane and Paul and others have worked on is for the first time ever, we'll have total redundancy. So that if we lose one tower, we don't lose the major western or eastern coverage for 911. And that's huge.
This is for fire departments, EMS, and the
And
sheriff's
law
office.
enforcement, yes. I mean, even, for example, the 5G technology for cellular allows us to do digital paging through the 911 system. And I didn't understand that until one of the deputies told me what he had heard and learned, which is true, that wherever they are, they can get a page and it tells them all the things that they now get from dispatch through their paging system. So it's like this, and thank you for bringing it up because it's critical.
If this, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. From what I understand, this create, with those up there in the west end, it's gonna create pathways for the microwaves, right?
Correct.
That will crisscross and create better reception everywhere. It should affect the end of the county.
The other thing that US Cellular has agreed,
Let me finish.
oh, I'm sorry.
It was also besides EMS, the school system would benefit that too, because I know they have communication issues up there with the buses in the west end of the county too, so I assume it's still
I
part of it.
I was gonna say, I'm sorry. No, I apologize to you, Mike.
Okay, all right.
All these southern, slow talking southerners, let's keep going.
I got a quick question. If this ends up being a successful partnership with US Cellular, as we hope that it's going to be, is there an opportunity to partner with the other dark areas of the county to do, I'm not calling this a pilot project, but
Phase one.
phase one? So there is some thought going into getting this same service throughout the whole county. And I understand completely why we started in the west end of the county, given body and all that stuff, but
Yes.
thank you.
As a matter of fact, Supervisor Ivy, US Cellular has already done a countywide map. They know exactly where they put towers if we wanted to put in other places, complementing their current towers.
I view this as a win.
I think so.
We need a win. We've got so many issues, and it seems like a little bit hard to believe, but we need a win.
So if I understand it correctly, this authority needs to pass the resolution. Will the Board of Supervisors then also have to pass the resolution, or would it go into the consent agenda?
Mike,
After you pass this resolution, everything that either of the boards needs to do is done. We're waiting on the VRA and the markets to do what they're going to do. And we're waiting on, and there's some more documents that I need to prepare, but they're all in the nature of administrative documents that people just need to sign off that this, basically that everything's gonna happen. People don't like to lend you $2 million unless you've signed off that, you know, everybody on the board, or supervisors on the board of directors was validly elected. They like to cut off things like that, but that's down to what we're at. Everything is authorized after you vote tonight.
All right, so this is a resolution that requires a roll call vote. Are you ready for us to proceed with that? At this point, I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution of the Board of Directors of the Grayson County Network Authority approving and authorizing execution of a comprehensive agreement with the United States Cellular Corporation.
So,
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I view this as a win. Appreciate the work.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Thank
Thanks,
you,
Tom.
Steve.
Just hope
Um,
everything stays.
It's been a team effort for sure.
Yeah, Steve.
At this point, we'll do a roll call vote. Supervisor Anderson,
Aye.
Supervisor Hatch,
Aye.
Supervisor Cornett,
Aye.
Supervisor Tomlinson.
Aye.
And the chair is also aye.
I just feel like I'm gonna be at the top.
I think the last thing I'll say is Tom and I've already talked really about a communication plan out on this. We don't want to set the bar too high. We don't need the governor to come in or anything of that nature, but we do want to communicate to the citizens about the actions that the board has taken, their thoughts in this, and what the next steps, what they can expect in the next 30 months. And so I think it's kind of important for us to get on the front end of this and let them know what, hopefully this will be a success, but what we're doing here. So
So timeline is we're waiting on VRA. And then we need to execute the signature on these documents for the agreement. That can't take place till after May
once we get the
10th.
Once they sell and we are in agreement with interest rates.
That's when this will become effective.
Yes.
And then lease conversations start taking place. You're gonna be a part of it. We don't know how long that'll take, but thinking that we're gonna expedite as quickly as we can with it. And then the tower's constructed. And so did I hear you say it was a 30-month?
Yes.
30 months.
30 months from the time BRA comes out to the time we're getting self signal and white tops, 30 months.
That's the goal.
Okay.
One other thing, talking about communication, could we get a monthly, maybe update once the process, it doesn't have to be at the board meeting, maybe just an email.
Yeah, you know.
Part of the agreement, Supervisor Cornett, is I have a monthly progress report. And when they start building towers, those will be held at tower sites. And then Nikki's gonna be very involved in the processing of invoices and checking. And again, the beauty of it is, we're not putting a bunch of money up front. They gotta spend the money and then ask for reimbursement, and we have to authorize and approve them. So yes, we'll do monthly updates for you, and if emails are sufficient, that's easy. Or if we need to do something more, we'll do it.
Well, Tom, I'm gonna personally thank you and everybody who's worked on it. Paul, Steve, thank y'all. This is moving the county in a positive direction, I feel like.
Thank
Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Thank you.
Hey, man, appreciate that.